For now I'm just using super glue to hold everything in place, and then I'm just using the glue and some baby powder to add as a bit of a filler and make that edge a bit more beveled, so that it's just got a little bit more grip strength until I come up with a permanent solution for the joinery. With that top piece now glued on, I can go around and refine the edge so that it's right up against the underlying piece. You can see here, as I'm sanding it, I'm scuffing the surface quite a bit. It's not something that I'm worried about, even though that is a black sort of colour. It's not the final finish that I'm going to be going with anyway. And between now and when it's finished, there's a couple of areas around the corners where it'll have to have some sort of filler put in there as well. When it comes to these individual sections that make up the outside part, I've been really surprised with the way the glue's been gripping, and that may very well end up being a permanent solution on its own. It could be the difference because I'm going from painted surface to painted surface. I think the coating they use on this board material is more like a powder coat, so it's really solidly bonded to the underlying aluminium. And there's a couple of instances where I've had to pop them off because I'd sort of gone off straight and the glue gripped and bonded before I had a chance to sort of shuffle it into the right position. And I had to go so far as to get a chisel onto the corners to lever them off and really break them away from the surface. And you can see there that it's damaged the corners quite substantially just trying to pop them off. So it's very likely that they won't need anything more than the super glue to hold them in place. That one there is where the larger extended piece should be, and I sort of put one there by mistake. And when it was fully bonded and I had to break it away, it was a real struggle to get it off. So I've just been doing some experimenting, and you can probably barely see it. There's a 90-degree cutting tip in there, and I found that I can run a bevel on the edge so that the corners match up perfectly so that I can do more detailed pieces. I'll show you what I mean. So these are some of the leftover pieces that I had for the side, and by making a new faceplate for the router and having this piece clamped on as a cutting guide, I've been able to get a 45-degree angle cut into it really cleanly, which means I can bring those two pieces together to make up little box pieces and that sort of stuff. This is going to be really helpful for some of the larger box pieces as well as the smaller ones, because by lowering the depth of cut, I can also cut not all the way through, like I did with the grinder when I made up that outer curve. But in this instance, it means that I'll be able to get a really sharp and crisp corner, which is that proper 90-degree bend that I need it to be for a box. So I'm going to push the limits of what I think is probably capable for this and make up this little box piece that goes on the end. I was initially going to do a stack of pieces to get the part that I needed, but I think this is a good opportunity to have a bit of a practice and possibly see if I can come up with something better. So that's it after it's been refined and cleaned up a little bit on the sander. I did another one like that and split it down the middle. That should give me the sides that I need. And then I can do the same thing again to work out the top and bottom. I'm a little curious to find out how good this super glue is on the edge connections, because it seems to be bonding really well to this inner plastic core. I'm going to do up two. I'm going to do one edge to edge and then another one 45 to 45, and we'll see what it's like. That's the 45 to 45. That actually makes a sharper join on the edge. So if I need to bring two halves together, that may actually be the way to do it as well, because it certainly gives you more surface area. That's the edge to edge piece. Let's just give it a bit of So it took a bit to break it. It has taken some of the inside plastic away with the glue. I also think that if I'd have left that a bit longer, it probably would have been stronger as well. I would imagine it's got very little sideways hole, but that's still pretty good. When you consider that's only about 1.5 centimeters across, that's quite a lot of tension given the size of it. Let's have a look at this piece. No chance. Oh. Okay, so that is a bit bigger. It's probably almost double the size, but certainly in all the effort that I've got in my fingers, that's pretty good. Let's go stronger. Oh, okay, that was giving that pretty much everything I had. But yeah, if that's the hold strength that I'm getting out of that I think is going to be ample when it comes to making up pieces like this, and even the larger ones. I'm thinking that's going to be a pretty reasonable solution for making up the box components. So with that cut down to size and the edges cleaned up, it's looking pretty good. The seams in some places are almost invisible. There's a couple of spots here and there where it might need a little bit of filler, but for the most part, it's I'm pretty happy with it. That's on there pretty good, so we'll see how it goes. So let's build some more. So I need to come up with a better way of doing this. The end pieces are short enough, they're quite good, there's no issues as far as that's concerned, but over a longer piece, I'm clearly not going to be able to hold that by hand. I'm going to use this again as a practice piece to see if I can come up with something a bit better. But, back to the drawing board for that one. The solution's pretty straightforward. I've basically just made a larger sort of cover plate that gives me a lot more length on one side so that I've got more adjustment for where this guide's going to sit. I've also made this inside hole a bit larger so that I can switch that out for a tip that has the same angle but has a bearing guide on it so that I can do these outer corners. This works okay, but it turns out that the tolerances that I have means that as it starts to cut, it's not actually running on the bearing, it's running in between the bearing and the cutting tip. So it sort of tucks in underneath. And if I'm not careful, it can cut areas out that I don't really want to have cut out. This is the piece that I stuffed up in the first place, so I used it as a practice. And what that means is that it leaves a little bit of a lip on this edge. But it looks like I'm able to sand that back with the disc on the angle grinder, and that seems to be the right sort of bevel. So even with a little flaw like I've got in that corner, that's going to be fairly incidental, but it's nice and tight, nice and square otherwise. So I should be able to glue those corners and get a fairly neat fit. There's a bit of rippling there where I stuffed it up in the first place, but that may even end up being a spare piece at this stage. So I'll set that aside and see if I can get the real one done. That's the little lip that I'm talking about there, but that sands back pretty easily. All in all, it went fairly well. I had a little bit of a wobble there, but again, I think that'll fill in without any major issues. I've ended up making up both of them. I was able to go back to the original one where that dimpling was, and with my little chaser hammer I've been able to sort of pretty much panel beat that out altogether. And I don't know, they've both come out pretty good. The joins are probably a little bit better on the second one, but I think the tolerances are a little bit closer on this one. This one feels like it may have crept out at being slightly larger, given that I traced off the other one. I mean, it's marginal in terms of actual size. So basically I've got a spare, but at the moment I think the one that almost didn't work has ended up working anyway. I've reinforced the inside of it with the epoxy putty stuff on the corners where they fold in on each other. I've been able to put super glue in there so that there's no issues as far as that's concerned. I've now got to sort of make up these strip pieces that go around the box section, and they sort of fold over a little bit as well. But yeah, that seems to be working. So I'm finding the more that I'm working with this material, the easier it's becoming. These ones I've just done, I've managed to actually work out these angles without even bothering with the router. I've just been able to grind them and sand them by hand to get them to match up. So with a little bit more practice, these sort of bits should come together pretty quickly. I was initially really skeptic as far as super glue holding, but man, if this keeps on working the way it is, it's going to make my life so much easier. It's to be seen yet whether or not the shock factor makes anything of a difference with it getting knocked around, but I'm not really being gentle in the way I'm cleaning this stuff up, and it really seems to be holding pretty well. So I still have to cut out the slot for where the lights go in there. I haven't fully sorted out what I'm doing as far as lights are concerned yet, so I'm going to leave that until that decision's been properly made. So between that bit and that bit, the super glue trick seems to be working really nicely. So there's still quite a ways to go, but it does look like things are scaling properly. But anyway guys, that'll be the update for this time. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.